Today on the bench we have actually have this hooked up to an antenna. Have a Cherokee NightRider Model 100. This is not a black box, what I call black box export radio. This is actually an FCC approved radio, so ID plate on the back actually has an FCC ID number on it. This is an older model radio, hasn't been made in a long time. I'm going to do 2 videos on this. This is just going to be a quick preview. I just got this just to show the inside, go over a few things. But I'm going to do a more in-depth, detailed look at this at a later point. I'll actually pull the face of the radio off because it's got dual stacked boards here, and I'll go over some of the kind of unique features of this radio at a later date. But today's just basically a quickie preview. It does work. Hooked it up. Looks 100% unmodified. When I hooked it up, it's doing like 95% modulation. Carrier power is like 3.5, a little over 3.5 watts. So yeah, nothing's ever been clipped, twisted, turned, cranked, or nothing in this thing, which is good from my point of view. It hasn't been butchered. Like I say, these are. I wanted to do a video on one of these because I really didn't need this, other than this is the only Cherokee radio I don't have. I have every other radio they've ever made, their base stations. I have the sideband version of their mobile radios. I have all of their walkie-talkies. This is the only one. I don't know how the lowest model radio happened to be the one that I never ended up getting. But so here it is. It's actually in really nice condition. It's got a haze on it. I'm assuming it might have been owned by a smoker, because just rubbing it with my finger, no glass cleaner needed. I can see the bezel cleans up really nice. So it's got a haze to it. But so anyhow, overview. Few neat features. One that I don't know if I want to say it's good or bad. It's good in how it works, and it's the same as their sideband version, where you push this little button here. Now, it may not show up too much there, but if I put it in shadow, turn that off. So it actually has kind of like a Cobra 29 night watch. And find a button there with my thumb, but turn it back on, you can see that nice, just a very dim blue glow to it. I like that. The only problem is that illumination strip. I'm assuming it's basically just like a Cobra 29, and if you own a Cobra 29 night watch, if you have one of those and it has any age to it, you're probably familiar with, they crap out. So, now this one still works though. Now this is probably, it's going to go on a shelf. It'll be a shelf queen. It'll never get used mobile. So this one might last me forever. But, and that's what this module is here. This is the power supply board and the cable that runs up to that illumination strip. The actual decal. It's actually a decal. It's not light bulbs or anything like that. It's actually it's a laminated decal on here, just like the Cobra 29s, and the whole thing actually glows. Now, you'll notice there's another board in here. Now, this is a Compander Module. That's another unique feature of this radio, and it's one thing, and it's kind of what I wanted to compare. I know some people have said, oh, this is just a rebranded Cobra 29. Absolutely not. This radio and a Cobra 29 have about the only thing they have in common is a microphone jack, is wired 4-pin. Other than that, that's about it. It is absolutely in no way, shape, or form close to a Cobra 29. So if you look in here, you'll notice it looks exactly like an RCI Ranger. So that should tell you something. Now, like I said, this is an FCC approved radio. I think they had to squeak that through. I'll get to that in a second. But you can see there's lots of parts missing. There's crystal filter missing here. That's because this radio could be a sideband radio. You can also see there's lots of trimmer parts. This thing could have had lots of options, lots of different features. I mean, there's probably more parts missing off of this board than there are parts on the board. But so this board here is a Compander Module. Now that's kind of, I guess you could say, similar to what the Cobra sound tracker tries to achieve, but I think this board works so much better, and it's 2-position switch, and I'll cover this in a lot more detail. I think when I did a video on the sideband, Cherokee's sideband mobile radio, I think I covered the Compander Module. I don't remember. I don't have to go back and watch it. but they actually work really well. It's a compression expander module. And to show how well it works, let me first flip over to a dummy load. So if we look at the oscilloscope down here, now I'm going to just whistle, and I'm going to hold the microphone actually a good ways away from my mouth so you'll see there's not going to be much modulation. And what I'm going to do, and yeah, that's another thing. You saw that little quick bleep. Well, that's a Roger beep. That was another thing this radio has, is a factory Roger beep, something the FCC would definitely frown on nowadays. But they approved it back then. So anyhow, the Compander Module. So when you hear the click, and you'll see the modulation increase, that's going to be me flipping the switch to turn on that board. So you can see it's you get a lot of amplification out of that, and I'm just using the microphone that the guy sent along with this thing, which is just a modern Bearcat unit and microphone. So yeah, definitely nothing special here. And again, you can see it's got that haze to it, smoker's goo it looks like, but it works really well. Now one thing that's kind of rare, well, I want to say rare, and I don't mean rare as in the radio's rare, which actually the radio is rare, but something you didn't see in this era. For a radio to have what that rear ID plate says, FCC ID, this thing was approved by the FCC, yet it has basically a banned PLL chip in it. And Christ, I should have looked it up before I started this video, because I can't remember. I think it's, what, a 1450106, I think. Now, it's a surface mount type. It's not your normal, dip package style, through-hole component. I think it's a 1450106. But in any case, that's an extremely easily modifiable PLL chip. So at some point in time, the FCC had finally, I guess, said, that thing can't be used in CBs if you want to get it approved for sale in this country. Well, that's what this radio has. Now, I don't know if they felt bad for Cherokee and said, well, okay, we'll let you use it, but you have to make it impossible to modify. Now, I know it's going to be really hard to see, because it's, like I say, double stack board. That's why I really need to completely tear the radio apart. But you'll see, way too much light. There's actually a second circuit board down here, and that's actually completely covered in epoxy. So that's how they prevented you from being able to get extra channels out of it. Now, I guess if you were so inclined, you could chip away at the epoxy. Would not be easy. That'd be a lot of work. Just, I don't know why people need extra channels to start with, but hey, whatever floats your boat. Or if you were really ambitious, you could just get new circuit boards made. It would honestly probably be easier than trying to chip that epoxy off of a surface mount IC. It'd be easier just to design out, draw out a new board, send your file out to a board shop, and just have brand new boards made and just make new ones. That'd probably be honestly easier. But like I say, you only need 40 channels. I don't know why people got to have all these blasted extra channels to start with. Now, one thing I really like about this, and it's something I wish every radio manufacturer did. Ah! Okay, let me try doing that without flipping the camera out of its mount. And what that is reverse protection diodes. Now, a reverse protection diode has a really simple job in life. It doesn't do anything most of the time. Hopefully, it never does anything. It's installed across the power jack, across your power cord inside the radio, backwards. And it really does nothing. There's a little bit of leakage voltage through it, but nothing to write home about. And it just sits there happily doing nothing until you accidentally hook your power cord up backwards. That's why it's called a reverse protection diode. What it's supposed to do is when it's the way it's installed, if the power cord is installed properly, it doesn't do anything. Like I say, there's a little bit of voltage leaks through it, but that's nominal. But when you hook up your power cord backwards, it's now a direct short. The problem, and what that's designed to do is, if you hook your power cord up backwards, and that reverse protection diode's in there, the idea being it's a direct dead short inside the radio, your fuse should blow. The problem is, 99% of these blasted radios they make, the reverse protection diodes are so small that the instant the power cord's hooked up backwards, they vaporize. And you still end up blowing up your radio. Burned circuit traces, I mean, God, I've just seen gobs of damage done to them. Sometimes it's fairly simple to fix. Just be one little tiny trace, a section of a trace burns off and that's it. I've seen other ones wipe out ICs, all kinds of crap. This radio is one thing I wish they did in all of them, and what that is a monster-sized diode. This bracket right here, that's actually what that is. Underneath of that, there is a big-ass honking diode. No other way to put it, big-ass honking diode. And I wish all, not some, I wish all manufacturers would start doing that, putting these big diodes in. It's one of those things, it really never does anything unless you hook the power cord up backwards. And they're saving money by not there. Use the smallest and cheapest thing they can get. I wish they'd go, like I said, hell, they even went to the trouble of designing a bracket to mount it flat against the back here. I mean, hey, thumbs up to them for going that extra expense. Other things, kind of odd. I'm not really sure why they did it. I'm sure they had a reason. But they've got the final transistor mounted on a bracket at an angle. It's tipped. They did the same thing in these sideband radio as well. They've got the final tipped at an angle. Don't know why they did that. Now, this little plastic thing you see here on the front, normally you just have the transistor, insulating washer, bias diode, and a nut. Well, they actually have this, the bias diode's actually underneath. It's trapped inside of this little plastic housing and sandwiches up against, but that's kind of neat. But yeah, the bracket, not sure why they did that. The driver's mounted flat against the back, but the final's not, so who knows. But like I say, this is just a little quick preview video. At a later date, because like I say, it's my radio, I'll recap it. It's old, it's got age to it. I'll go cover, like I say, I'll check the other video if I've already went over in detail on the Compander Module. There's no real reason to do that again. If not, I'll cover that in detail. Like I say, I'll blow the front of the radio apart. I really don't need to do that, but I want to show like I say, the PLL board that's down in there, because it's kind of unique, and this doesn't use a normal channel selector. This uses a rotary encoder. So the channel selector switch is actually just this little tiny guy right here. You can see my finger's wider than it is. And if you watch right here in the middle, when I turn it, you'll see this little piece moving. Well, that's the part that's actually going to click, click, click. That's the little like ratchet paw. But so it actually doesn't have a channel selector switch. It's just a rotary encoder. So there you go. There's just a quick preview of the radio. Like I say, I think they're actually fairly nice radios. Like I say, people compare these to a Cobra 29. Absolutely nothing like it. There's this is a Ranger. There's no other way to put it. It's a Ranger, hiding out in somebody else's clothing. But it basically a RCI designed board. It's just a clone of that. So there you go. So at some point in the future, I have no idea when, I'll do a much more in-depth, detailed video on this, and I'll get it cleaned up so it's not covered in cigarette smoke. And we'll actually do some more in-air testing. Oh, one thing I did want to show. If you look at the spectrum analyzer here, I found this kind of interesting. If I key the microphone, if I turn the radio on here, make sure I'm still in dummy load. Yeah. So I have the span set. Start frequency is 25 megahertz. Stop frequency is 400 megahertz. So, really doesn't have anything down the 54 megahertz range. But what the hell is that down there? Now that's actually kind of rare. I mean, it's not a very big peak, but still. It is a peak, and that's at, let's see, peak right. That's at 351 megahertz. So, yeah, that's something you really don't see very often in a CB radio, is a big peak way out here, but really no 54 megahertz. So, I mean, that tells me the trap circuit's working, at least the 54 megahertz trap circuit's working, but that's kind of odd. But then again, you have to remember, it's an RCI radio. And the design, the circuit board layout, it's an RCI. And they're known for being splatter boxes all over the RF spectrum. So actually, I guess if that's as bad as it gets, actually, count your blessings, because that's actually not much. I've seen RCIs that are, wow, I mean, they just light up the entire RF spectrum when you look at them. But I did find that kind of interesting. No 54 megahertz spike, and a huge one out at, or not huge, but a definitely measurable one out at 351 megahertz. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Let's see, 20... times, what would that be? My calculator here doing some math. Times what? Hell, that would be... I wouldn't be out that far. We're at 27... What did I say that was? Yeah, 350. That's not even a harmonic frequency, really. I'm just trying to do the math here really quick to see if that's a, because like 54 megahertz, that's second harmonic, and you just keep going out. That's a weird frequency. I almost have to do some sniffing around inside the radio to see where in the hell exactly that spike is being generated. And when it comes time when I recap the radio, of course I'll do a transceiver alignment on it. I may actually try fiddling with the network here. Now this is something, unless you have a spectrum analyzer, you should never basically touch anything after the final transistor. There'll usually be at least one adjustable coil here, and that will get peaked in an alignment for maximum power. But if you ever see, two after the final, don't ever touch that second one or coils. You see people spreading these coils, man. They just got them mangled, all hanging out, going for maximum power. And they don't seem to realize it makes it look good on a watt meter. Absolutely 100% of that power increase that you get by spreading these coils is not on the CB channel you're on. It's in the television band, because you're messing with the 54 megahertz trap circuit. So the 54 megahertz signal that was being absorbed by these coils is now making it out the coax connector. So, but yeah, I'd be interested to kind of sniff around and see where that 51 megahertz signal is actually being generated at. But there you go. There's just a quickie preview of a Cherokee NightRider 100.